First, I'm going to talk about Henry's life and influence. Henry VIII was born in 1491. He is the second son of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. Although he is infamous for his 6 marriages, 2 daughters, and one only son, he is also known for having reformed the religious aspects of his kingdom. In 1534, Henry VIII declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England and forced the separation of the Church itself from the Roman Catholicism. The separation was actually a byproduct of Henry's obsession with producing a male heir. Henry's interest in foreign policy was focused on Western Europe, represented by a pattern of alliances centered around the kings of Spain, of France, and also the Holy Roman Emperor. An example of this shift was Henry's unsuccessful Anglo-Spanish campaigns against France, ending in peace with France in 1520. Let's talk about the population opinions about Henry. While to some, Henry VIII was a strong and ruthless ruler, forcing through changes to the church-state relationship in which excluded the papacy and brought the clergy under control, thus strengthening the crown's position and acquiring the monastery's wealth.
During the reign of Henry VIII, it wasn't recommended to displease the king. For him, every action which didn't satisfy him was considered as a treason. He often condemned those who he disliked or those who had disobeyed his orders. But, in his mind, the highest treason was the adultery and the incest. Without proofs nor a trial, he accused people for having committed adultery and incest, therefore betrayed him. Moreover, every act of provocation towards the nobility were sanctioned. Henry VIII defended the nobility. If he considered that a person betrayed him, he would imprison or execute her by beheading the traitors. Thomas More, a famous politician, refused to assist to the crowning of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of the king. However, he wrote a letter to the king explaining that he acknowledged Anne as a queen and that he was really happy for Henry VIII. But, despite this, the king considered him as a traitor and executed him in 1535. Thomas Cromwell was the Prime Minister of the king from 1532 to 1540. He supported him for all the king's weddings and divorces. But he also supported his marriage with Anne of Clèves, but it ended up a disastrous relationship, and Henry VIII, who thought Thomas humiliated him, accused him for treason. Like the others, he had been decapitated, but it was a very cruel execution. The executioner cut off his head 3 times, and the head had been boiled and planted on a pike on the London Bridge as an example for those who intend to betray him. Henry VIII had an obsession. He wanted a son, an heir. When Anne Boleyn was pregnant, everybody thought that she bare a boy, but she had a girl. It was a big deception for the king. After, she was impregnated again, but she was miscarriage. When she finally gave Henry a boy, he died after 20 weeks. Henry VIII didn't accept that, and he considered it as a treason. After, people accused Anne for having committed adultery and incest with her brother George. It was a good way for the king to condemn her, so he executed her in 1536.
During the 16th century, the Church of England broke away from the authority of the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. It was called the English Reformation. These events were, in part, associated with the wider process of the European Protestant Reformation, a religious and political movement that affected the practice of Christianity across all of Europe during this period.
The trigger of the schism in England was the second marriage of Henry VIII. He wanted to divorce with his first wife to marry with Anne Boleyn. As the Pope didn't agree with him and he didn't give him the permission to divorce, Henry became angry against him and, later, he tried to withdraw his powers. Henry wanted a Christianity without Pope. After Henry declared his supremacy, the Christian Church separated, forming the Church of England. He set up a new act, which obliged people to have the same opinion, to agree with him. There were a lot of sanctions for those who disobeyed. Most of the time, he decapitated people. He confiscated texts or books which attacked the system of Anglicanism, or he withdrew the rights of people who didn't agree with him, or he gave them fines to pay. Henry also used pills of attainder. Without guilt, he condemned people.
Henry VIII, with the help of Thomas Cromwell, organized also a survey of monasteries, and he removed all the monasteries which didn't have an annual income of at least £200. After, he suppressed even the rich monastery and gave them to the nobility.
Let's talk about wars, and first let's put a historical context. Different wars happened during the reign of Henry VIII. He controlled the military and started to create a royal navy. He bought many cannons and boats and trained many soldiers. He wanted to extend his territory by invading France and had a real influence on Charles Quint, or Charles V, the Emperor of Netherlands. The different battles were in England, Scotland, and abroad like in France, in Calais. Let's talk about wars against France. There was the first invasion of England on France in 1513. It's called the Battle of Spurs. Henry VIII wanted to retrieve lands that England lost during the 100 Years' War. With his ally, Charles Quint, they decided to invade Calais. They took over Terouanne. Then the French army didn't want to accept their inevitable defeat and fought against England. But the French army lost Terouanne, and Henry VIII's army kept moving towards Tournai. Tournai was a city in Belgium, which was a part of French kingdom. And they won the war in 1513. Henry VIII kept Tournai as a part of his kingdom, but 6 years later, in 1519, Francis I redeemed Tournai to Henry VIII. A second invasion arrived in June 1544. Henry VIII and Charles Quint decided to invade Montreuil and Boulogne. Boulogne was defeated in September 1544, but Charles wanted to conquer Paris, but Henry VIII didn't want to, so Charles decided to make peace with Francis I. At that time, Henry VIII was alone against France, so France made use of that situation and tried to attack England. But it didn't go very far, just the Isle of Wight, and then they have been repulsed. Those two countries were in an economic situation worsened because of the war. The solution was to make peace, and they signed a treaty, the Treaty of Caen, June 1546. But Boulogne was kept as a guarantee by Henry VIII for 8 years, and then returned to France for 750,000 of actual pounds, because Henry VIII needed money for his country. There was war against Scotland too. This war was between the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of Scotland on December 1513. The invasion of Scotland on England happened in the northeast of the actual England. It happened the same year and at the same time as the Battle of Spur, August 1513. So Henry VIII was in England while James IV invaded his kingdom. Scotland was at that time an ally of France, and while Henry VIII was taking over Terouanne, Scotland decided to weaken Henry VIII by invading. But 1 month earlier, James IV sent a message to England for England to have time to build a strong army, and even if the king wasn't there, commanded by the Earl of Surrey. The battle started on September 1513 in Branxton. In fact, James IV wanted to annoy Henry VIII via Earl of Surrey. For James IV, it was kind of a game. He was saying to Surrey where the battle should be, etc. At first, James IV and his army went on Branxton Hill, but then he realized that this place was a bad strategy, but it was too late. The English army arrived on Branxton Hill. Finally, James IV was killed in the Battle of and the Surrey's army won at 6 p.m. on the 9th September 1513. The battle was just 1 day. It is a very famous battle because many soldiers died, and it shows that using pickers was less efficient than using artillery with bows.